we have to alternate the close and the far spacing between the inner and the outer portion of the CV joint. So here's a close one, and here's a far one. So that'll be the orientation it goes. If you get it wrong, if you get it so that the wide spacing lines up with the wide spacing and the narrow spacing lines up with the narrow spacing, you're not going to be able to get it together. So you don't have to worry too much about that. What I actually need to do is I need to put this in the cage. So remember, it goes in sideways into the cage, and then you twist it. There it is. This is the bevel ring side, so this is the side that's going to go onto the axle first. Same with this outer portion. This is the side that's going to go to the boot, because my dowel pins are going to go to the hub. So I'm going to put this together, and I'm going to line it up so that I've got the close spacing lined up with the wide spacing. So I know that this groove is going to go with this groove, and I'm going to tilt it a little bit, line the cage up. I'm going to be able to pop a ball in, so it's in both grooves. And I'm just going to move around the joint to the next spot, and I'm going to have to tilt it a little bit so that I have enough of an opening to get that ball snapped into the cage and in the groove of the outer part and the inner part. And I'm going to turn it, go to the next side, give it a little bit of a tilt so I can get this ball in place. And it snaps into place. I've got 3 in now. This is the 4th. Get it tilted enough so that it gets into that cage. You can see it's starting to come together. I've got 2 more to do. Again, I'm going to tilt that cage so I have access. And make sure that I tilt it enough here. Sometimes you have to kind of wiggle the components here, get them all lined up to the groove. There it goes. And then I've got 1 more to do. I'm going to tilt it, push that bearing in, get everything kind of wiggled into place, and there, it's together. And you'll know you've assembled it correctly if you can push and pull that middle part out. That's that extension as the suspension moves and the hubs are moving farther apart and closer to each other. We're going to have this in and out movement. And of course, we can have the offset tilt movement as well while it's doing that. So this is an assembled CV joint. Now we're ready to put the CV joints back on the axle. The first thing that we're going to slide on is the boot. I have this boot nice and cleaned up. I have my bolts in place through the boot. I'm just going to take a little bit of grease and just put just a little smear on the inside of this small end of the boot. That'll help it slide onto the shaft. So we're just going to kind of push and rotate, and to get over the shoulder, it does help if you use a screwdriver or something to kind of gently pry up the edge of the end of the boot to help it jump over that. So just while you push, a little bit of a pry, and I almost got it. There, it's starting to go. Twist, and it jumps over. And I'm going to push it all the way up so the end of the boot rides between these 2 little bumps. That's its natural home. And the next thing that we're going to put in place is our bevel washer. Now, this bevel washer again is slightly cone shaped, slightly tapered. This is the concave side. This is the side we're going to put out so that the small diameter rests against the seat or the step on the axle, and the large diameter is going to push against the CV joint. So we're going to slide that bevel ring up into place onto that shaft. The grease that I'm using is CV joint grease. I got this at Napa Auto Parts, so relatively straightforward stuff. Comes in a tube. This is a 4-ounce tube. 4 ounces is about how much you need per joint. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to squeeze it into the back side of the joint. So the back side of the joint is where the taper is on the inner part for the splines, and it's also opposite where the pins are, where these on the 914 these roll pins go into the axle flange. So on the back side, I'm going to take this tube and I'm just going to squirt it in all the nooks and crannies, all the places. Be very liberal with it. 4 ounces is actually quite a bit. Get it against all those balls, inside the race, all around the race and kind of put a little extra on it. Try to gauge how much is left in the tube. I have a little bit more than half left in the tube right now, so I'm just going to squirt some in here, kind of against the shaft. That'll kind of be inside the boot there, and that'll help give it some grease in the future. Now I'm ready to slide my axle, or my CV joint, onto the axle, trying to line up where the bolts are. You know, the boot can pivot, so it doesn't have to be exactly right, just kind of close enough. You'll start to get this to slide on the splines, and it should start to push forward. I'm now going to get the bolts into their holes so they don't get too greasy, and then I should be able to just push this all the way forward onto the spline. There it is, that's just about all the way. In fact, it's even jumping forward a little bit. Now, this groove for that clip ring is actually getting all covered with grease, so I'm going to wipe it off so I can see that groove. That bevel washer is going to be pushing towards the end of the axle, making it hard to get that clip ring into place. The first thing I'm going to do is, with a brass punch and a hammer, I'm just going to make sure that this inner part of the CV joint is fully seated, and it did go a little further. So that's fully seated, and now I'm going to take that ring, that little snap ring, and I'm going to kind of get it into place over the end of the splines. It's not going to go all the way to the groove, but that's okay because we'll be able to get it there with the aid of a hammer. So sometimes I need a screwdriver to help push it onto the axle. I'm going to push it as far as I can. Now, so it's against the inner part of the joint, but it's not in the groove. So what I'm going to do next is, with my hammer and a punch, a small punch, I'm going to just kind of tap inwards to compress that bevel ring, and a little bit downwards, almost diagonally, and it'll push in and help get that ring into the groove. There. So I just saw it snap quite a bit, but I'm still going to double check it by, from the outside, give it a tap all the way around, just to make sure it's 100% into the groove. There. I'm happy and confident that ring is not going anywhere. It is in its proper place. I'm going to take the rest of my grease, and I'm going to fill this all up. There. So, this boot, or this joint, is ready to go. Oh, one more thing I'm going to do, and that is the back flange of the joint is still a little loose here. I'm going to take an adjustable set of adjustable pliers, and I'm just going to, on the perimeter, just help it do a little bit of a squeeze, just so that this flange starts to be in the right place. It doesn't come apart while I'm trying to install the axle and make a greasy mess. Of course, when I torque it down on the car and it gets fully pulled up, this will get seated 100%, but this just helps it stay in place. There. Another wise thing you can do is, if you're not going to be putting the joint in right away, is I like to take an extra latex glove and stretch it around and put it around the joint like that. That way it stays clean and nothing can get in and contaminate that grease.